Remember the picnic blanket? It was soaked in sunshine 1 minute, gone the next. I can't shake that line. It echoes through my mind every time I close my eyes. We met at the edge of the pines just after dawn, 5 of us piling into the gravel parking lot like nothing could go wrong. The air was thick with promise. Peanut butter sandwiches, a wicker basket brimming with fresh berries, and my stupid grin as I handed Mia the thermos of lemonade. Only I didn't know, I couldn't have known, how fast the world could tip sideways. The first stop was the clearing, a carpet of emerald grass surrounded by towering trunks that trembled in the morning breeze. Jason tossed his phone onto the blanket and cracked a joke about forest spirits. Lily fluttered her fingers, brushing daisies between her knuckles. Even Owen, usually glued to his earbuds, leaned back and let the wind tangle his hair. I remember the way sunlight danced on their smiles, like they were coated in liquid gold. Then came the second location, the mossy log down by the stream. The water babbled over smooth pebbles, and we dared each other to skip stones. I counted the ripples, the way they shimmered, and for a heartbeat, everything felt suspended in a perfect photograph. But I should have heard the silence that followed the laughter. It settled between the trees, heavy and watching, as if the forest itself held its breath. By the time we climbed deeper into the woods, location 3, though we didn't call it that, the air had grown cooler, the light dimmer. I felt it first. A shift, like someone had turned down the world's volume. Branches scraped against our arms. Jason's jokes faltered. Lily's daisies wilted in her hand, petals curling inward as if recoiling from whatever lurked beyond the next bend. I wish I could tell you exactly when the shift became terrifying, but horror doesn't wait for cartoons or flashing neon signs. It tiptoes in on ordinary feet. One moment, I was handing Owen a granola bar. The next, I watched Mia's eyes widen, her shoulders arching as if something had brushed her neck. She spun around, mouth open, but nothing was there, just a dance of leaves and shadow. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, voice trembling. We all paused. The forest pressed close, its exhale like a sigh from some ancient beast. Jason shrugged, but his grin was brittle. He scanned the gloom, trying to make a joke, trying to make himself believe we were safe. Lily stepped forward, daisies gone, barefoot on the cool earth, and said, "Let's keep moving." Location 4 awaited, an old fire ring we'd seen on a previous hike, stones blackened by smoke. We told ourselves we were hunters of a story, adventurers collecting moments. But by then, the sun was dipping, and the trees had grown tall and hungry around us. I realized we'd lost the path, the small trail markers swallowed by moss. Our basket sat empty, the forest feasted on our confidence. That's when I felt the first true crack of dread. My chest tightened so suddenly I thought I might shatter. Owen spun around, blood draining from his face. "Guys," he stammered, voice small. I can't find the way back." We huddled, 5 bodies pressed against petrified bark. Someone, I can't remember who, reached for their phone. No signal. It was like the woods had swallowed our voices. The birds were gone. Even the stream's babble was a whisper somewhere far off. Panic bloomed in Lily's eyes. She dropped to her knees, brushing dirt across the stones of the fire ring as if digging for answers. "This isn't right," she muttered. "We're not supposed to vanish." Jason laughed then, low and cutthroat. "We haven't vanished," he said, voice tight. "We're just delayed." But his shoulders shook. We all shook. Something had seeped into the trunks and soil, into our skin and bones, a pressure that hummed inside our skulls, a warning more urgent than our own racing hearts. I closed my eyes, willing the world back into the bright morning it had been. But the second I opened them, I was certain we were lost. The forest had swallowed the sun. Our picnic blanket lay abandoned on scrawny ferns, half hidden by leaf litter. Mia nudged me, trembling. "Should we split up?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to protect them, to wrap my arms around the group and insist we were fine. But the woods around us were a maze, shifting as we watched. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow threatened to move. "We stick together," I said, even though my voice sounded thin. I grabbed the basket handle, heavy now with the weight of what-ifs. We circled, huddled in that forsaken clearing, each heartbeat echoing louder than dizzying thunder. The fire-ringed stones gleamed like eyes. I couldn't decide if they were watching us or warning us. Then, far off, a crack of dry wood. Just one. Like a footstep. We froze, breath choked in our throats. "Probably just a deer," Jason whispered. But I didn't look at him. I stared at the line of trees, dense and silent, waiting. The sun dipped lower. My shadows stretched unnaturally, flickering across the roots and rocks. I prayed for something, at that moment, anything to make sense. But all I felt was the forest's pulse, slow and loaded, like a beating drum in a nightmare. I don't remember exactly when the panic peaked, but I know it did. I felt hands on my shoulders, Lily and Mia gripping me, their nails digging through my shirt. Owen's lip quivered. Even Jason, who once raced me to skip stones, had gone quiet, his eyes wild. We turned in a circle, wild-eyed five against the wall of trunks, and I realized this was the part the movies never show. Not the gore or the roar, but the stitch-tied hush before something irreversible happens. And yet, in that hush, something changed. A flicker of something human, a guide, maybe a hiker's whistle carried on the dying breeze. We strained to hear it, clinging to the sound as if it were a lifeline. Mia leaned forward. "Someone's out there," she said. I nodded, though my throat had gone dry. Jason reached into the basket, which still held the thermos, the only proof we'd ever been innocent picnic-goers. He flung the lid open, banged it against a stump. The sound crackled across the undergrowth. We pressed on, cluster of five, voices low, moving toward the promise of rescue or ruin. I didn't know which. But for the first time since the morning, I felt that tremor of hope, the flicker between terror and relief that kept me breathing. That's how our real story began, not with a scream or a flash, but with the soft, persistent echo of survival. And I promise you, whatever happened next, it would change us forever. The snapping echo drew us forward, each footstep a drumbeat of dread and determination. I led the way, breathing ragged clouds in the dusk air, arms outstretched to steady Lily and Mia as they clung to me. Jason and Owen flanked us, their silhouettes trembling against the deepening green of the pines. Every shadow seemed to press in, swollen with unknown shapes. Then we saw it, a faint glow through the trees, like a dying ember caught in the underbrush. It flickered in time with my pounding heart. 1, 2, 3, and beckoned us closer. The five of us stumbled toward it, voices hushed prayers. The glow resolved into a lantern perched on a wooden railing, someone's makeshift camp on the edge of a narrow service road. I lifted my voice, cracking like a broken branch. "Hello?" No reply, just the hiss of the lantern's flame. Jason jogged ahead, sweeping aside low-hanging fir boughs. The lantern rested beside a battered hiking pack and a trail map pinned to a log cabin, its walls charred by age and weather. Lily sank to her knees, chest heaving. "We're saved," she whispered, though her voice wavered on the edge of disbelief. Owen rifled through the pack. A half-empty water bottle, a first aid kit, and a strange old radio patched together from mismatched parts. Jason flipped a switch. A sputter of static, then a brittle voice. "Emergency, please respond. Coordinates." His hands trembled as he tuned the dial. We pressed against the cabin's warped door, half expecting it to burst open with a stranger, or nothing at all. Then the radio crackled again. "Pick up your signal. Help is 2 clicks northeast." The words were muffled but real, more potent than any fairy tale rescue. Mia gulped, tears shining like wet petals. "We need to follow that." I nodded, wiping sweat and tears from my face. We refilled our water bottles, patched Lily's scraped knees, and checked our phones one last time. 30% battery, no signal, but enough for a flashlight. Bound together by exhaustion and relief, we stepped back into the trees, guided by the radio's staccato instructions. The path was barely a trail, a ribbon of dirt overgrown with ferns that brushed against our shins like curious hands. The lantern's glow faded behind us, swallowed by the forest once more. But now we moved with purpose instead of panic. I tightened my grip on Owen's arm. He squeezed back, eyes fierce with resolve. Wind sighed through the canopy, carrying hints of pine resin and damp earth. We traced the radio's beeps through overhanging branches and around fallen logs. Each click nudged us deeper, drawing us like moths to a promise of safety. My senses sharpened, the taste of adrenaline in my mouth, the ache of every muscle begging for rest, the pounding question in each heartbeat, would we really make it? Then, almost without warning, the forest opened onto a gravel turnout. A dusty pickup truck sat idling under a battered Forest Service sign. Headlights cut through the gloom in two golden beams. I stepped forward, every nerve ablaze, and called out. A figure climbed down from the cab, a ranger gaunt and steady, radio in hand. His flashlight swung across our faces, illuminating fear, dirt, relief, and sweat in stark relief. "You five," he said, voice low urgent. "Get in. Fast." We collapsed into the truck bed, shoulders brushing, bodies still shaking. Jason's shirt was stained with blood from a gash we hadn't noticed. Lily leaned against Mia, eyes shut. The ranger slammed the door, and the engine growled to life. As we rattled down the winding road, the trees blurred into ribbons of black and green. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass window and watched our footprints fade in the dust. A mile, or maybe minutes, later, headlights from an ambulance swept over us. Flashing red and white strobes danced across the cab's interior. The ranger slowed, then pulled over. Paramedics rushed us out and led us into the glow, voices calm, professional. They tested our pulses, wrapped us in blankets, and offered warm water. I cradled Lily's hand, feeling her warmth ebb back into her fingers. Owen sat on a stretcher, staring at the ceiling with wide eyes that still held flecks of forest green. Jason leaned against the ambulance wall, silent for the first time since dawn. Mia's lips trembled as she took a sip of water, tears pooling with relief. I turned to the paramedic who knelt beside me. "Is everyone going to be okay?" My voice cracked, brittle as dead branches. He smiled, tired, gentle. "You're all shaken, but you'll pull through. You stuck together. That's what saved you." And as they let us collapse into safety, I realized the forest hadn't swallowed us. It had tested us, wrenched us to the brink, then spat us out onto solid ground. The darkness still clung to my clothes, but in the harsh lights of the ambulance bay, I felt something else. The pulse of life, the warmth of survival, and the unbreakable tether between 5 teenagers who refused to vanish. The fluorescent glare of the hospital room punched through my eyelids like a spotlight on raw nerves. I blinked, the world soft and hazy, and felt the rhythm of my own heartbeat echoing against the sterile walls. The scent of antiseptic and distant elevator wheels filled the air. I tried to move, but the crisp white sheets clung to my arms. Mia's voice drifted in from the next bed, small and ragged. "You're awake." Her hand closed around mine, cool and trembling. I squeezed back, tasting the salt of tears I didn't know I'd shed. The sun had vanished behind a wall of glass, leaving us in this fourth and final refuge, the hospital ward. I turned my head and saw Lily propped up against pillows, her once bare knees now bandaged and bruised. Her eyes were the same shade of green the first remembered in the forest shadows, wide, searching, alive. Jason sat in a plastic chair, hunched forward, gaze fixed on his phone as if it might still hold the map we'd lost. Owen lay with an oxygen mask, staring at the ceiling as though the unresolved pattern of tiles could tell him the way home. It was quiet here, but the echoes of what we'd left behind snapped at my ribs. I pictured the lantern's glow, the ranger's urgent face, the endless walls of trunks. I imagined the forest breathing behind the hospital doors. And then I felt it, a slow, steady pulse beneath my palms, the reminder that we had all come back. A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand, her voice warm but businesslike. She checked my adjusted my pillow, murmured about vitals and observation. I nodded, letting her words roll over me like gentle waves. When she moved to Lily's bed, I reached out to Jason. "Hey," I whispered, voice still raw. He looked up, eyes haunted but grateful. I offered a shaky smile. He returned it, that brittle grin softened by relief. The next hours folded into a blur of hushed conversations and clipped beeps. Our parents' faces appeared and disappeared through the door, eyes wet with relief and terror. I felt Lily's fingers brush my arm as she whispered, "We made it." Jason's laughter cracked the hush, a brittle, beautiful sound that shattered the last of the fear. Owen exhaled, slow and heavy, and for the first time, seemed to let go of the forest's invisible chains. Night fell outside, but in my room, the golden glow of a single lamp cast long, reassuring shadows. We traded small details. Mia's scraped elbow, Jason's silent promise never to wander off, Lily's vow to bring daisies next time, real daisies, not wilting ones. Owen grinned, voice steady for the first time, and said, "Next picnic indoors." I laughed, a dry sound that felt like air finally rushed back into my lungs. The tension that had knotted my shoulders for hours unraveled in that moment, part gratitude, part disbelief. We had been swallowed and spat out, tested and scarred, but here we were, unraveled skeins of fear woven back into the tapestry of our lives. Before I drifted toward sleep, I watched our shadows stretch across the wall, for friends bound by something they couldn't name. The forest had tried to claim us, but it only sharpened our edges, taught us how to cling to each other in the darkness. Morning would come soon, and with it, a world that knew our names again. But for now, in the hush of this final location, we let ourselves breathe, daring to imagine that the real story was just beginning, one of survival, of friendships tempered by terror and strengthened by the light we found in each other. The dawn light slices through my bedroom blinds in narrow bars, gilding the dust motes that dance in the still air. I sit at the edge of my mattress, the quilt tangled around my legs like seaweed, and feel the weight of yesterday's hospital smells lingering in my lungs. This is our fourth location now, home, where the world is supposed to feel safe, and yet every creak of the floorboard sounds like a shriek in the night. My phone buzzes on the bedside table. A text from Mia, a selfie of her smiling in her own room, mascara smudged under one eye. I thumb a reply and cradle the device against my heart. Then I push myself to stand, feet aching, and shuffle toward the window. Outside, the street is quiet, but I half expect to see the pines looming at the end of my yard, their needles quivering with hidden threat. I run a hand through my hair and catch my reflection in the glass. My own eyes look haunted, fringed dark with sleepless nights. I pull on yesterday's hoodie, still smelling faintly of antiseptic, and pad down the hall. Lily's door is cracked open. She sits at her desk, drawing daisies in a sketchbook, petals spilling across the page like ripples on water. She glances up and offers me a small, shaky smile. Without a word, I drop into the chair beside her. She hands me a pencil. Together, in silence, we sketch memories. The picnic blanket, the mossy log, the fire ring, the lantern. The drawings blur with tears until the lines waver like a reflection on a stream. "Do you ever hear it?" Lily whispers, voice so soft I almost miss it. "The forest calling?" I swallow hard. Some days, I swear I can. An echo of wind in my mind, a pulse under my skull. I nod. She presses her fingers to her temple, closes her eyes. I'm trying not to, she says, opening them again. But it's there. Across the hall, Jason's door creaks, and he steps into the corridor, headphones slung around his neck. He's dressed for school, backpack slung low. He stops when he sees us, studies our faces. You okay? His voice is quiet, cautious. We're sketching, Lily says, gesturing to the daisies. Jason exhales and nods, as if letting go of some silent fear. He joins us, and soon the hallway fills with a scratch of pencils on paper, a fragile symphony. Later, I drift downstairs to the kitchen, our fifth and final space, or so you think. The scent of pancakes simmers on the stove. Mom hums, stirring batter, oblivious to the storm lodged in our chests. I pour syrup on my plate but can't eat. My hands shake, the world spinning on its axis. Eat, she says, setting the plate before me. I look down. The golden drizzle gleams like sunshine on the forest stream. My throat constricts. I press a forkful to my lips, taste sweetness and fear in the same bite. Lily joins me, her eyes on her pancakes, but her mind somewhere deep in the woods. Owen slides in at the table, backpack cast aside. He blinks, bright like a deer caught in headlights. You guys coming to school? He asks. His voice cracks, and I see him swallow back tears. Jason reaches across and ruffles his hair. It'll be fine, he says, voice firmer than I've heard since dawn. Owen nods, forcing a grin. He eats in 3 big bites, shoveling pancakes like they might be gone tomorrow. We finish in silence, each of us carrying fragments of the forest inside. No one mentions the missing hours, the echo of that single step, the sting of cold air on our skin. It's unspoken, because to speak it aloud might summon it back. The bus arrives, its engine a low rumble. We file out, 5 ghosts in fresh uniforms. As I step onto the sidewalk, I glance back at the house, its white siding glowing in the morning light. A haven, yes, but one that feels strange now, like a costume I can't quite wear. On the bus, I sit beside Mia and Lily. We pass the woods where our nightmare began, its edge marked by a crooked fence and rusted sign. I tense, heart lurching, until the bus rounds the corner and the trees disappear from view. Relief floods me, and I grip Mia's hand beneath my thigh. She squeezes back. At school, the hallways buzz with chatter about exams and sports tryouts, oblivious to the shadow that trails us. We slip into class, teachers glancing up with polite smiles. No one asks where we've been. We're back, we're okay, so the world moves on. Yet in each corridor, each classroom, I catch flickers of the past. The lanterns flame against dark bark, the radio's crackle guiding our steps, the paramedic's calm voice. The memories coil inside me, a silent warning that safety can shift in an instant. When the final bell rings, we reconvene at our usual meeting spot, the bench by the school's ornamental pond. The water reflects the afternoon sun, rippling with koi that glide like questions beneath the surface. We sit, shoulders brushing, and watch the ripples grow. Tomorrow, Jason says, voice steady, we go back. He points to the woods in the distance, a thin line of green. My heart stops. Return as in revisit, face the forest again? My throat tightens, panic bubbling. Lily leans forward, eyes intent. Not to go hiking, she clarifies. To say goodbye. She gestures at the dark treeline. We need to close this chapter. We can't keep running from it. I swallow. My hands curl into fists. The forest still hums beneath my skin, a loose wire sparking. But Lily's right. If we never confront it, the fear will linger, wrapped around our minds like vines choking a tree. Mia nods slowly. Owen exhales. Jason stands, stretching long limbs. Let's do it, he says. Together. As we rise, I feel the old terror flare, and pale beside the warmth of their courage. We walk off the campus, 5 shapes against the late afternoon sun, toward the pines that swallowed us and spit us back whole. I don't know what we'll find when we reach that clearing, but for the first time, I feel ready. Ready to face the dark and name it. Ready to step through the threshold of fear and claim our story's ending. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find that the horror was never the forest itself, but our silence. As we marched toward those waiting trees, voices low but resolute, I realized that survival isn't just returning. It's speaking our truth into the shadows, so they can't swallow us again. My heart hammered in my ears as we stepped off the trail into that familiar clearing, now tinged with the gold of late afternoon. The picnic blanket lay folded beneath a cluster of ferns, our silent witness. I swallowed against the lump in my throat and met each of their eyes. No words were needed. Whatever had happened before, we faced it now as one. The forest pressed in around us, shadows pooling at the edges like watching eyes. Jason knelt and smoothed the blanket over the moss, his fingers trembling. "I thought I'd never see this again," he murmured. The words hovered between us, fragile as moth wings. I took a step forward, inhaling the resinous scent of pine and damp earth. My breath tasted like memory, sharp and bittersweet. "We left so much here," I said, voice low. "Let's finish this." Lily held the daisies we'd sketched in the hallway, real petals trembling between her fingers. She scattered them across the blanket, white against green, each bloom a small peace offering. Mia pulled from her pocket the battered thermos, dented and half empty, and set it beside the flowers. Owen placed the radio at the center, its static switch now silent, as if laid to rest. We formed a loose circle, knees brushing, hands clasped. Silence wrapped around us. No ranger's lantern, no ambulance lights, just the hush of trees trembling in the breeze. My pulse slowed as I let the moment settle. The forest felt different now, less hungry, more honest, as if acknowledging our bravery. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I didn't know who to address, the forest, myself, or my friends. "For wandering and blind. For letting fear drive us apart." Jason nodded, eyes glistening. "Me too. I never meant to lead us into that panic." We turned to Lily and Mia and Owen in turn, voicing apologies for panicked screams, for splitting up, for not trusting each other sooner. Each confession was a stone cast into the quiet pond of our unity, ripples fanning outward until the tension dissolved. When we finished, Lily exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to let the whole forest exhale with her. "We did it," she said. Her smile was fragile but certain. A shaft of sunlight pierced the canopy, illuminating our circle like a spotlight. The blanket's edges glowed, the daisies bright, the thermos shining like a trophy of survival. I closed my eyes and let that light wash over me, warm as a promise. Mia stepped forward, brushing her fingers over the radio's cold metal. "This thing guided us," she said softly. "Maybe it deserves a proper farewell." She turned the dial one last time. A burst of static hissed, then faded into silence. She switched it off and placed it gently on the blanket, radio and roses entwined in an ending neither of us dared to speak. Owen crouched beside a fern, uprooting it carefully. "We brought this from the fire ring," he said, holding the small plant out. Its roots clung to damp soil. "Let's let it grow here, where we faced our worst." He dug a shallow hole and laid the fern in the earth, patting dirt around it like a quiet benediction. As we stood, the forest seemed to exhale, branches swaying as if in applause. No distant footsteps. No unseen watchers. Just the soft pulse of life in every leaf and twig. I stepped forward and gathered up the picnic basket, brushing away a layer of moss. Inside lay the crumbs we'd abandoned, the empty wrappers of granola bars, the ghost of laughter. I tipped it, and the scraps fell onto the blanket. "For the forest," I said, voice clear. We watched the wind carry them away, like feeding birds in a dream. Jason reached behind him, pulling a small notebook from his pocket. I wrote this when we first got lost, he said. Pages fluttered open to scribbled maps and frantic notes. He tore out the pages one by one and let them drift through the shafts of light, each sheet twirling to the forest floor. When the last page settled, we all exhaled. The clearing felt empty but full, empty to fear, filled with our shared strength. I looked at my friends and saw the same quiet triumph mirrored in their eyes. "Let's go home," Lily said, voice firm. We stepped back onto the path, leaves crackling underfoot like applause. The trail markers seemed brighter now, leading us not into dread but out of it. My chest felt lighter, as if the forest had released its grip. The ranger's truck appeared around a bend as if summoned, headlights splashing warmth onto the trees. We climbed in, and he offered a small nod, respect in his eyes. We didn't speak. No farewell words were needed. The road wound upward, the forest receding until the treetops brushed the sky behind us. When we reached the gravel parking lot, the sun was a low ember on the horizon. We climbed out, unsteady on legs that still trembled but held promise. Jason picked up the picnic blanket, daisy-stained and weathered, folded it once, then twice, and handed it to me. I tucked it under my arm like a veteran's banner. Mia opened the car door wide. "One last look," she asked. We turned. The clearing lay peaceful, the ferns sprouting bright and green, the daisies wilted but remembered. The forest breathed its farewell in rustling leaves. I whispered, "Goodbye," though the word felt too small. Then we piled into the car, doors clicking shut, engines humming. As we pulled away, the trees slid past in solemn procession, guardians of our secret victory. I pressed my forehead against the window, letting the wind cool my cheeks. The forest behind us was a silhouette of dark relief against a sky set aflame by dusk. My friends' faces glowed in the fading light, soft, determined, survivors. And I knew, some stories end not with a scream, but with a breath, the exhale of fear and the inhale of freedom. We drove toward the promise of tomorrow, 5 hearts stitched together by terror and triumph, carrying home a story that would bind us forever. How we walked into the woods, faced the darkest echoes, and walked back out into the light.